You're listening to Beyond Bizarre True Crime, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including The Murder in My Family, Missing Persons, DNA ID, Zodiac Speaking, Scene of the Crime, 3 Men and a Mystery, and All Things Crime. All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
Welcome to episode 2 of Beyond Bizarre True Crime. I'm your host for this episode, Emily from Morbidology. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about a case that is beyond bizarre: the unsolved murders of Russell and Shirley Dermond. In May of 2014, 88-year-old Russell Dermond and his wife, 87-year-old Shirley Dermond, from Eatonton, Georgia, had been scheduled to attend a Kentucky Derby viewing party at their friend's home, which was held on the 3rd of May. Russell and Shirley had enjoyed almost 7 decades of blissful marriage, and by all accounts they were the perfect match for one another. The couple had once owned a small number of fast food restaurants, before selling them and retiring when Russell was 58 years old. Over the course of their marriage, they were very devoted to their family, working their hardest to provide the best life possible for their 3 children. As their son Keith said of his father, he was such a family man. He was just devoted to his family. He was a very hard worker, just a family-made man. Now in their 80s, they were the proud grandparents of 9. Around 10 years prior, Russell and Shirley built a $600,000, 3,250 square foot home in Reynolds Plantation, which is an upmarket gated community on Lake Oconee, with a 24-hour security guard at the entrance. This area in general was a very safe and quiet area, without a homicide in almost 1 decade, and without a home invasion in almost 2 decades. Greatwater, in particular, had virtually no crime, and was the perfect location for a peaceful retirement. As a matter of fact, Reynolds Plantation was one of the most exclusive gated communities within the entire state of Georgia, and Russell and Shirley made sure to take care of their home, with many who knew them saying that it was constantly spotless. Life at the Dermond home was peaceful, and they shared a life that was well lived. The couple enjoyed going for walks together and doing crosswords in the local newspaper. They were both longtime members of Horseshoe Bend Country Club. Shirley was an avid bridge player, while Russell enjoyed playing golf. In fact, the couple were in such good shape that they didn't like to disclose their ages to people. Their pastor, David Key, joked that they acted as though they were in their 60s, not approaching 90. When the couple didn't show up to the party on the 3rd of May, their friends became immediately concerned, even more so when they called their phones and received no reply. After not hearing from the couple for several more days, this concern escalated into fear, and a friend and her husband decided to embark on the Dermonds' home to make sure that they were okay and that some kind of accident hadn't taken place. The truth, however, would be far more unconscionable. Upon reaching the front door of the couple's home, the friends discovered that it was unlocked. They entered the home, and by first appearances, nothing appeared to be amiss. The home was spotless as usual, but Russell and Shirley were nowhere to be seen. That was until they entered the garage. Here, they found the decapitated body of Russell, sprawled out between the Dermonds' Lexus SUV and their Lincoln Town Car. Shirley was absolutely nowhere to be found within the home. Police were alerted to the gruesome scene at around 10 a.m. While it was evident that the body was that of Russell, a positive identification needed to be made and that would be made via fingerprints with Russell's Navy enlistment records from the early 1940s. When police arrived, they first of all cordoned off the home and began their search for Shirley, fearing that she too would be found deceased inside the home. However, Shirley was nowhere to be found. And even more disturbing, neither was Russell's decapitated head. An autopsy would confirm that Russell had died from cranial cerebral trauma. Due to the lack of blood around Russell's neck, it was evident that the decapitation had taken place after he was murdered. However, since his head was absent, the pathologist couldn't determine whether Russell had been killed by a heavy blow to the head or by stabbing or shooting. Sheriff Howard Sills would state that they believed that Shirley had been abducted, stating, "I sure hope she's still alive, but I'm not overly optimistic due to her husband." They were working on the case as a homicide as well as a potential abduction, and describes Shirley as standing at around 5 feet 2 inches tall and weighing around 148 pounds, with grey hair and blue eyes. While sometimes in cases such as this, the missing spouse would be considered a suspect, Sheriff Sills would state that this was not an angle they were investigating. By all accounts, the couple were happily married, and there was evidence that Russell's body had been moved, and the investigators working on the case didn't believe that Shirley would have been capable of moving him. Furthermore, all of Shirley's belongings, including her car, remained at the home, which further compounded their theory that she was not involved. Investigators, assisted by sniffer dogs, would trawl through the wooded area next to the couple's home, in a bid to uncover some more evidence which could lead them to Shirley, while sonar equipment was used to search Lake Oconee, which was situated behind the couple's home. With no leads to go on, Sheriff Sills contacted the FBI to get their assistance in the investigation as well as in the search for Shirley. Quite early on in the investigation, Sheriff Sills needed to dispel rumours that had been circulating throughout the tight-knit community, such as rumours that Shirley's decapitated head had been found. He said, "My community is going hog wild with rumours. The focus needs to be, where is Mrs. Dermond? And I think we're getting away from that and going into this bizarre stuff." The Dermonds' 3 adult children, Bradley, Keith and Leslie, would fly in from out of state to assist in the search for their mother. They also needed to help investigators rule out whether their father had been tortured. Due to the condition of one of his fingers, investigators had wondered if he had been tortured before he was killed. However, the appearance of his finger had been caused by an old injury. Tragically, this wasn't the first time that the Dermond family had been rocked by a violent incident. Back in 2000, one of Russell and Shirley's sons, Mark, was shot and killed while buying crack cocaine in downtown Atlanta. Their son Bradley would state, "This absolutely makes no sense at all. We're still hoping that our mother is okay." As the search continued, a vigil was held for Russell and Shirley at Lake Oconee Village Pond. Around 100 concerned locals showed up to light candles and pray for the family, as well as pray for the safe return of Shirley. Meanwhile, digital billboards containing a photograph of Shirley, alongside details of the case, were erected throughout Georgia in the hopes that they could generate some much-needed tips. Investigators would once again focus their attention on the calm waters of Lake Oconee. They had scanned much of the lake and shoreline, but the lake was extremely extensive. The FBI would announce that there was a $20,000 reward for information in the case. Then on the 15th of May, there was a crushing update when it was announced that a body had been pulled from Lake Oconee, and it was most likely that of Shirley. The body had been found floating in the lake around 5 or 6 miles away from the Dermonds' home, and it had been found by a fisherman who stated, "It became apparent as we pulled closer that it wasn't just something. It was a person, and I won't forget it." By the following day, the body would be positively identified as Shirley. She had died from blunt force trauma to the head, and then had been dumped in the lake. Her body had been weighed down with 2 cement blocks. Presumably the killer or killers had not taken into consideration that gases that develop within the body, once deceased, caused the body to float to the surface. And investigators speculated that the killer or killers had never intended on Shirley's body being found. Following the murders of Russell and Shirley, fear swept throughout the gated community, that the Dermonds called home. One neighbour, Carrie Wire, said to CBS, "There is obviously concern and surprise. To have this happen, not just in this community but so close to home, makes everyone a little jumpy, a little unsettled." The notion that somebody could sneak their way into a gated community with a security guard and slaughter an elderly couple in the safety of their own home was terrifying, and the idea that a sadistic killer was lurking within the community horrified absolutely everybody. While the community had several surveillance cameras, it would be uncovered that they had not been working at the time. They had been damaged by a recent storm. Investigators working on the case would state that it was possible that Russell and Shirley knew their killer. The neighbourhood was extremely secure, and there was no sign of a forced entry, nor was anything stolen from inside the couple's home. Both of their cars remained in the garage along with their wallets and mobile phone. In fact, this had hampered the search for Shirley. Typically, her phone would have been traced to give some kind of indication of where she could have been. The couple didn't own a debit card and owned a few credit cards, all of which had been found inside the home. There had been no activity on their bank account and there was no ransom, ruling out the likelihood that the murders were somehow financially motivated. Speaking about the crime scene at the home, Sheriff Sills stated, "There is nothing out of place. Everything is immaculate. This is the cleanest house I've ever been in." Another angle that was being investigated was whether the killer or killers had gained access to the couple's home via boat. The lake behind their home was quite extensive, spanning 4 counties, and since Shirley's body was found in an area accessible only via boat, it was determined that this was the most likely scenario. According to investigators, they also theorised that the killer or killers may have been local, or at least knew the area well enough to manoeuvre through the lake, most likely at night. The motivation behind the senseless murders was extremely perplexing to both the investigators and those who knew the Dermonds. They were known to be very friendly and very kind people, who by all accounts had absolutely no enemies. A friend of Shirley would state in the media, "You couldn't say anything bad about the Dermonds. Everybody would always say how sweet they were." According to investigators, the killings most likely took place at some point between Friday and Sunday, but they were wanting to try and determine a more accurate date, with Sheriff Sills stating that he was leaning towards the murders happening most likely on the Friday or Saturday, as opposed to the Sunday. Investigators were able to determine that Russell had been seen at the Publix pharmacy near their home on the Thursday, and then a neighbour reported seeing him walking on a golf course on the Friday. Inside their home, investigators found a crossword puzzle from Friday's newspaper that had been worked on, and the couple had failed to retrieve their mail the following morning, indicating that the murders certainly had taken place at some point between Friday night and Saturday morning. Another angle that was being investigated was whether the murders were somehow associated with organised crime, with investigators combing through phone records and financial records, but absolutely nothing came back. It just appeared to be dead end after dead end, and Sheriff Sills would state during a press conference, "Quite candidly, this is the most baffling case we've ever worked." The 3 children of the Dermonds, Bradley, Keith and Leslie, would be interviewed, with Sheriff Sills stating that he put them through the mill with questions, but there was nothing to indicate that they were involved. It would also be ruled out that the murders were somehow linked to the murder of their son, Mark. His killer had been identified and was still in prison, serving his sentence for that crime. The days would turn into weeks, and really no progress was being made in the investigation. Investigators could find absolutely no motivation and would up the reward fund to $63,000. Shortly after announcing this, Sheriff Sills would reveal that evidence indicated that Russell and Shirley had been killed with different weapons, but said that he wouldn't elaborate on what those weapons were. He would further reveal that his educated suspicion was that at least one of the killers, if there were indeed multiple killers, knew the Dermonds and had shown up to their home to steal something the Dermonds either did not have or could not get. Almost a year to the day that the murders occurred, it would be announced that there was a person of interest in the case. Sheriff Sills stated that the person of interest was somebody that they had spoken to beforehand, but had since determined that the statements they had made turned out to be untruthful. While he had his suspicions, he said that he didn't have enough evidence to elevate this person from a person of interest to a suspect, nor could they figure out a potential motive. There was another person of interest in the case, a man who was spotted near the Dermond home at around the same time the murders took place. However, this person never came forward and was never identified. The murders of Russell and Shirley Dermond still remain unsolved today, but the grisly nature of the crimes still remain ingrained in the memories of those who call Etonton home. While theories and rumours have been plentiful, the majority of those, especially the most outlandish, have been ruled out. The lives of the Dermonds were examined with a fine-tooth comb, and it revealed that the couple had worked hard, paid their taxes, went to church, and spent time with their family. There were no seedy business deals or anything remotely untoward, nor was there any indication that anything had been stolen from the home. Could the murders simply have been a thrill killing? Some sadistic person or persons who just wanted to kill to see what it felt like? Could it have been a heist gone wrong? Some even speculated that it could have been a warning message to somebody close to the Dermonds. But as of yet, all leads have led to a dead end. As Sheriff Sills stated during the investigation, they've done a good job of concealing themselves. We've got to do a better job of finding them. The most recent development in the case came in May of 2021, when it was announced that a potential lead had been unearthed. However, Sheriff Sills declined to publicly reveal what that lead was, out of fear that it could hamper the investigation. While he remains hopeful, he has said, "This one might not pan out either. I just don't know yet." If you have any information about the unsolved murders of Russell and Shirley Dermond, please contact the Putnam County Sheriff's Office at 706-485-8557. Thanks again for joining me for this episode of Beyond Bizarre True Crime. I hope you listen to my podcast, Morbidology, which is available across all podcast platforms. It is a weekly true crime podcast created using investigative research combined with primary audio. It covers mostly lesser-known cases and takes a look at any systemic failures that had a part to play in the crime. You can also follow me on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, where my handle is Morbidology. My website, where I post articles about various true crime cases, is also morbidology.com. As I wrap up, I want to leave you with a short preview of Morbidology. And be sure to check out episode 3 of Beyond Bizarre next Saturday, where your host will be the amazing Robin Warder from The Trail Went Cold. Morbidology is a weekly true crime podcast hosted by me, Emily Thompson, author of Unsolved Child Murders, Unsolved Murders, Cults Uncovered, and Mysteries Uncovered.
911 emergency. My son shot my husband. I need an ambulance. He's bleeding.
Each week on Morbidology, I uncover a new true crime case, using investigative research combined with source audio.
I just snatched it from her. My son had took it and it's like, I just hit her with it.
Morbidology is a victim-focused podcast that mostly covers cases that aren't widely documented in mainstream media. I also like to take an in-depth look at any systemic failures which had a part to play in the crime.
Do you know why you're here?
For a home invasion gone terribly wrong.
Listen to Morbidology across all podcast platforms.
Beyond Bizarre True Crime is produced by Mike Morford and Jess Betancourt for AbJack Entertainment, with music by Connor Betancourt. If you enjoy this podcast, make sure to subscribe wherever you are listening now, and please take a moment to rate and review the show. You can find Beyond Bizarre True Crime on social media. We're on Twitter and Instagram with the handle @BeyondBizarreTC. You can also find us on Facebook by searching for Beyond Bizarre True Crime Podcast. The views and opinions of the hosts and guests on Beyond Bizarre True Crime do not necessarily represent those of the show's creators, producers, or sponsors. Be sure to tune in on Saturdays for all new episodes of Beyond Bizarre True Crime.